Just going to show you really briefly just a code that was run on everybody. Everybody has a version of this. There's been enough of the knowledge coming out about the straw man and all that, even though they kind of miss some things. Also, culture seem to miss some things when they're in their own quarrel. But I just want to point it out very briefly that pretty much everyone is functioning on some type of code or treaty, especially in which, by the way, they refer to themselves. And the example I'm using here is the Black Codes, because the 13th Amendment states that even though we're all equal and that everyone now will be free, etc., it has a little clause in it, and it says, unless you are a criminal. And it turns out, well, I'm not going to go and elaborate too deep for you, that because these edicts come from draconians by way of Orion, meaning that the draconian system here, or the law-based system, which is Saturnalian, that has the instruction to rule here in this segment of the galaxy, has variations of codes. And this is why the Saturnalian tradition, as I was explaining to everyone, that is all about law. It's all about bar. And it's constantly being corrupted because we have all the society has been infiltrated. But before that corruption, this is, let's say, the judicial arm, okay? The judicial arm of the cosmos. Who's responsible for enforcing the justice? And this is why when you remove that judicial component, which has been removed, and I'll explain that in just a minute, it has been supplanted. Then you get this corruption. You get where your actual legal figures, which are actually supposed to be the elves, they're supposed to be upright, right? So they're supposed to be the ones that are giving you the moral bearing and the rules of how to measure yourself. That system has been corrupted, and now you have actually, it's like a shape-shifting invader sitting right behind the same council, sitting right behind the same control center of Bar, which is Saturn, and the legalities that are basically the edging and nudging of us doing the proper thing in our growth. Not anything to do with this system that has been developed, which only benefits the people who have taken over it. But I just want to be very clear here that in these laws and in these rules and edicts that actually come from the draconian councils and empires, there's an awareness that once a human being, if you may, or a being of the cosmos, let's just call it a being aware of self, not acting, but being, okay? Once a being slips into acting, slips into getting in debt, slips into the lower vibratory field, if you may, like that their field is no longer harmonic, what happens next is they become a color because they actually divide at that stage. Okay, so they become a color. And when you start to rectify when that color or that debt is balanced out, that would be when the person actually becomes free again. So what I'm explaining to you is that if you are labeled as a color, which also can be a name, these Indians, these Africans, and then the reference or the name that you're using is not from the mother tongue, is not the mother lodge, if you may, meaning that this is not the place that you were born. If you're referring to yourself as being born from another mother that is actually more of a corporation and a dead entity and not actually a real being. I'm from the United States, right? Now, actually, you would then become a color because even the name United States is just a color. And I'll just explain this very cleanly here. It's just the awareness that when you say that you're a color, you get put under a code. And this is just the Black code. And this actually affects, as we know, that quote unquote African American or the Kemetan. However, what I'm here to tell you today is that all of these people that are inside of the Uniteds, whether it's United Arab Emirates, United States, the United Socialist Republics, the unions of Soviet unions, European unions, any of those unions and Uniteds, which is all a deception, you're under actually codes. And at least for us, as far as, let's say, the Kemetans, they have our codes published. Like most of these codes are actually hidden, meaning just the act. It's just the act. You just being aware that just the act of them putting a clause in and say, but yeah, if you're a criminal, then you're not free. You're not a citizen. You don't have any rights. You're not able to keep your family. We can work you for nothing. We can do all these different things to you just because now you're classified as a code or a number. Okay, and I just wanted to make everyone aware of this really briefly before we dive into this, because you're going to have to see where things went sometimes before you can even see how we got there. And so I just want to say, in the end, somebody is now using codes that actually are tied into debt and criminal acts. And they're placing these codes onto other people. And then those people are saying, yeah, I am in that code. I am from this place, or I am this color. And then through that action by law, which is draconian law, passed down from Orion. So it has already a bull behind it, meaning it literally will work. If you can fool the people into doing this, it puts you in debt. And this debt equals, for the most part, your wisdom, like how high you can get in the spirit, how clear you can be when we start talking about that you have your own power. Okay, because I notice this is very fuzzy for people these days about the difference between their power versus some external force that they keep calling on externally, and not realizing that all this exists inside. And the sheer action of you making the decision to think you're talking to something outside is redirecting your energy. And this is why I haven't seen too many, if any person that is into worship, calling beings and all that kind of stuff, doing all the prayers, I haven't seen these beings really master the matrix, but yet and still, meaning master their lives. But yet and still, I see boatloads of what I would say is distorted, very dark forces, just practicing only really a few principles of the truth. And then the rest, they're fudging on, still getting farther than those people. Why? Because those people have turned themselves over and opened themselves up to something they just don't understand. And this is why on the door of the temple, it says, know yourself. Because you cannot know all of these things, these powerful forces and principalities and all this kind of stuff, if you don't know yourself. Because what lens would you be looking through? Somebody else's lens? An external lens?